calls, but I am excited to share some of my journey with you all today. I was born in Southern Illinois in a small town of about 14,000 people. My parents divorced when I was around 2 years old, and I remember as a kid I was pretty attracted to being outside and playing with the older kids in the neighborhood. They weren't the best influence for me. By the time I was 11 or 12 years old, I had begun to experiment with drugs and alcohol. And by the time I was 15 years old, I was in juvenile detention center for the first time. I was in rehab by the time I was 16, and by this time I had frequent use of drugs and alcohol. A life of crime became a part of my life as well. By the time I was 18 years old, I was locked up in the Department of Corrections for the first time. For the next 10 years, that would become a pattern in my life. I would get out for a short time, and I would go right back. I guess I was trying to do right the wrong way, which sounds silly today. A lot of times I would get out with great intentions and motives, but I would always go back to the same neighborhoods with the same people doing the same thing. My 5th time incarcerated was 2009. I remember feeling so hopeless and broken because I had essentially burned my life to the ground. I had broken everyone's heart that had ever loved me and had a lot of destruction behind me. During that 5th and final time incarcerated, I said, God, if you're real, show me you're real. You know, prior to that, I believed God was real, but I never allowed him to work in my life. And that was honestly the first sincere prayer I had ever prayed. After that moment, things started to change for me very quickly. I began to attend church and 12-step meetings in prison, as well as get my GED and some college credits. As you can imagine, my path to becoming a professional has not been very conventional, if you will. Independently, I began to seek God to work on changing who I was. As I was getting close to time for release, I knew I wasn't supposed to go back to Centralia, which was my hometown. Working with the chaplain in prison, she told me about a Christian discipleship program in Springfield, Illinois. I had never been to Springfield, Illinois, but I was interested. So I read the packet, filled out the paperwork, and began to wait. My parole date came, and they picked me up at the prison gates. I came to Springfield with nothing. I had no driver's license, no ID, no clothing. I did get to the halfway house, and it was a very safe place. The people were very supportive and wanted to see people like me change. Part of the program was you had to get to work. I began to put in applications. I must have put in 100 applications and no callbacks. As you can imagine, I'm not very attractive on paper. I have 6 felony convictions, and I've been to prison 5 times, and at that time I had no driver's license. But around Thanksgiving that year, the Salvation Army called me for an interview. I went to that interview, and I was really honest and upfront about my situation. They let me know that there was nothing in my past that was going to prevent them from hiring me. I started in the warehouse as a sorter for donations that would come in, and we'd get them ready for the sales floor. Within 6 short months, I was promoted to the production supervisor. Now I had 5 stores and nearly 60 employees I was responsible for. You talk about being thrust into leadership, it was really overwhelming. I remember feeling very underqualified and as if I lacked the skills to do the job. Thankfully, by this time, I had a good support system and people in my life I was able to lean on for direction and guidance. A little less than a year later, that position was terminated effective immediately due to administrative change. I was heartbroken. But I learned a lot in that job, and a lot of those relationships I still have today. I was very thankful when they called me to do a men's study on Sunday nights with the guys in that program at the Salvation Army. A few months later, I ran into a friend from back home, and he was managing a Sprint store in Springfield, and he asked me what I was doing. Well, I didn't have a job. So he brought me in for an interview, and I started at Sprint as a salesperson. Again, I felt very underqualified. Within a couple of months, one of the owners came from Michigan, and I was able to work side by side with him for almost 2 years. I learned the ins and outs of business and customer service, how to do good business and treat people right. Do what you say you're going to do and try to find an answer for the customer. And by 2015 and 16, our store began to get national recognition for both customer service and volume. But I was working up to 70 hours a week a lot of times. In 2018, my wife and I were expecting our first child and moving into a new home. My mentor from the discipleship program, Tom, had a friend named Jim Britton and told me about Express. I had never heard of Express Employment Professionals. I remember pulling up to the building thinking, did my mentor really just send me to a temporary service? In my first meeting with Jim, I could tell he wasn't trying to talk me into anything, but he was trying to help me make a good decision for myself. I remember leaving that day feeling like I had a lot to think about, and through prayer and talking with my friends and family, it became apparent to me that Express was the right decision to make. I accepted that offer in April of 18 and began as an outside sales rep. Within a couple months, I was doubting my decision and questioning myself. I was not having much fun coming from retail. I was used to the instant gratification. The sales cycle was really small, 15 or 20 minutes a lot of times. Somebody came in with a broken phone or they lost their phone, you get them a new phone, you might see them next month. But thankfully, I joined a franchise that was well established and truly believed in the Express system. Don Adams was my trainer, and he's still my boss today. He taught me how to control the controllables. That was my attitude and my activities. See, when I started, it was a different economy. There were more applicants than there were jobs available. And by month 6, I was having some success and starting to enjoy the role. I was still really doubting myself, though. I wasn't at the level of success I was when I left Spring. 2019 marked my first full year with Express. I followed the process, I believed what they said, and I was able to achieve top 50. Myself and my team. It had never been done in the nearly 40 years the Britons had been in business. Then 2020 came, of course, and we all know what happened. COVID hit. We were at ILC in Nashville when the rumors of a quarantine started. Next thing you know, we went from billing around more than 100 companies down to 25 or 30. It was very depressing and dark. I remember meeting with Don and Kirk, and we were trying to figure out what we were going to do. Everyone was trying to figure out whether we were essential or not. So eventually companies started to come back, but where were the people? We had no applicants coming in. So Don, Kirk, and I began to put together what we call the Stimulus of Hope program. We essentially applied the Express sales process to our recruiting partners. We developed a list of schools, churches, rehabs, and nonprofits in Springfield, and we began to educate them on who we are and what we do. By 2021, we began to receive a lot of referrals. Sometimes groups of people came in saying they were sent to us from an agency. It proved to be a good investment and a productive program. In 2021, we achieved Sapphire for the first time.
Nice.
And by 2022, we hit Diamond for the first time. 2023 was different. It was as if somebody had turned on the light and then turned it back off. Businesses began to scale back, and applicants were few and far between. Companies were now more focused on quality, as we all know, versus just getting a butt in the seat. Though we were not able to achieve Sapphire or Diamond, we did hit Platinum in 2023, and I was once again able to achieve top 50 status as number 35 in the world. I wish I could take all the credit for the success I've had with Express, but I truly have a great team. I joined a franchise that believes in the Express system. We follow the process and we trust the system. I have a great mentor, an amazing wife, and 3 beautiful children. On April 16th, I celebrated 10 years of continuous sobriety. In the chairman of that Salvation Army board now in Springfield, because I'll never forget what they've done for me. Part of why I love what I do so much is because I get to provide opportunities for others, just as I was provided with an opportunity when I didn't see one myself. If you're struggling today or doubting your decision, get around some good people, and don't be afraid to ask for help. God is real, and He wants to show you He is real. That's what I still have to do today to continue to learn and grow as a professional. I appreciate the time today and the opportunity. God bless.